In the third rak'ah, the Imam recited a verse or a part of a verse that every believer has probably memorized and holds on to, because it is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we must all know that the promise of Allah is the truth. وَعْدَ اللَّهِ حَقٌّ. And this is a statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where He says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. And whoever depends on Allah, whoever puts their trust in Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make a way out of every difficulty. Makhraj. Make a way out of any and every difficulty. Putting your trust, depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is one of the traits that every believer is expected to have. It is a trait that is very easy to develop, but it is also a trait that is also becoming very difficult to have, especially in the times that we're in today. And depending on your environment or depending on your climate, certain things can help you to build on your tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, certain things would help or would play a role in destroying your tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A typical example of how tawakkul is so important, whether we look at the lives of the Anbiya, look at the life of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, who as a lone young man stood up for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when he saw danger before him, he didn't choose to turn away from faith. Instead, he put his faith more in Allah, that when he was thrown into the fire and he uttered the words, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the fire, Qul ya nar kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. O you fire, become cool and a source of peace to Ibrahim. When you look at Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, all of the trials that he encountered, especially the trial of Fir'aun, he gets to a river or he gets to the sea, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes the sea to part ways for him, and through that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him and saved his followers. وَإِذْ نَجَّيْنَاكُمْ مِنْ عَالِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَسُومُونَكُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ يُقَتِّلُونَ أَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَيَسْتَحْيُونَ نِسَاءَكُمْ وَفِي ذَلِكُمْ بَلَاءٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ عَظِيمٌ وَإِذْ فَرَقْنَا بِكُمُ الْبَحْرَ فَأَنْجَيْنَاكُمْ وَأَغْرَقْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ وَأَنْتُمْ تَنْظُرُونَ. Again in these verses, these two verses in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah talks about how, and remember O Musa, how we saved you from Fir'aun and his army, and we caused them to drown while you saw them. Then you come to the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How many instances do we see from his life of how his trust in Allah brought him success? One of them we always talk about took place on the 17th day of Ramadan, the day of the Battle of Badr, when the Muslim army was less than those that had come to fight to crush them. Yet he put his trust in Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them victory. But something we probably all don't remember, that as Allah granted the Muslims victory in the Battle of Badr, they should be celebrating, isn't it? It was something that was worthy of celebration. But just as Allah gave them the victory of Badr, Allah took the life of the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the same day, Ruqayyah. So he should be celebrating, but then he was mourning. Or rather, he was celebrating and mourning. So Allah did that not just to test him, but to also keep him humble and dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that he remained until his final breath, where he recited or where he said, Ila Rafiq al-A'la. These are from the lives of the prophets, the Anbiya, and when we come into our own lives, we see these things happen to us as well. Some of you might notice, and some of you might not notice. You might see yourself being elevated in one thing or the other. You ask yourself, why are you in this position? Why did Allah choose me to place me here? It is because of your tawakkul. It is because of your faith in Him. And even the one that Allah might elevate because they don't have faith, Allah has told us, do not look at them. Do not be driven by their life. Do not be affected by their wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made that for them in this world, خَالِصَةً يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. But He has reserved it for only the believers on the day of resurrection. But yet, your elevation today in this life is concurrent with your belief and your tawakkul in Allah. I say this because if we are, again, and I want to come back to this thought of changing what we have today as a norm in our society in Nigeria, if we are to revive this country, and I want to say this specifically to the younger generation, not to the older ones, not to those above their 60s or above their 50s, may Allah preserve them as well, but to the younger generation, especially those that Allah will test with power soon. I say this in very real terms. Put your trust in Allah. Do not be like those that have gone before you. There are some that Allah gave them a position, and what they thought that position was to do was to enrich themselves and not think about others and not think about their accountability before Allah. It is not bad for you to have wealth. Everyone wants to. You want to live in comfort. You want to be able to fly first class, not economy. You want to be able to drive the Ferrari Testarossa, Lamborghini Diablo, Rolls Royce GT 500. I also dream about those cars, by the way. You want to live in Maitama and not Guagua Karimo, right? You want to have all of that. You want your daughter to be, right now even brothers don't even want to get married in Nigeria anymore. They are looking for a black Arab woman or an Arab woman or Blarab. I don't know if I made sense. Yeah? Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Doha. Please don't leave our sisters, wallah. They are praying that you should come and marry them. So please marry from here. Yeah? It's not bad to have any of these things. But do not make it your sole aim in life. If this is all you work for, then trust me, you have lost. But if what you live for is honoring those who have honored you, worshipping Allah as He deserves to be worshipped, and as a leader, working for those whom you have been made to lead, because Sayyid al-Qawm khadimuhum, the leader of a people is their servant. It is not the other way around. If this is what life has put before you, then you have attained success. And this is where every single young person should attain to get to. So if you are in a small position today, honor that position you are in and be dutiful to Allah, because that is what will ultimately elevate you. So for those in their offices, whether you are working in parastatals, in government, wherever you are working in, don't subvent. Don't use different ways and means and say, oh, it is all business, I want to make a quick buck. In order to do, and in doing that, you're putting someone else in harm. Don't do that. To those who do businesses, be honest in your trade. Be good in your muamala with one another. And when you interact with brothers, look at them with a face of mercy. Do not look at them to cheat them and deceive them and harm them. And whenever something is done, be in a haste to forgive the other party. Don't hold a grudge against one another. Do not oppress one another, and do not be oppressed. La darar wa la dirar. Do not oppress and do not be oppressed. Because if we do this, then maybe in our lifetime we will see our society change for the better. Because inna Allah la yughayyiru biqawm hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.